everyone, and a warm welcome to everyone who's watching and listening today. This is another episode of Fay Tom's DCP, Divorce Coaching Podcast. And as always, we have got a brilliant guest, and I'm going to ask Hafsa in a moment to introduce herself, but we've got Hafsa Patel, a mediator from Primrose Mediation, chatting with us today. Hi, Hafsa, thank you for coming on as a guest.
Hi, Faith. Thank you so much for having me today. It's an absolute pleasure, and I'm certainly looking forward to today's discussion around mediation. Yes, I'm Hafsa. I'm based in East London. I'm a family law mediator. So I've been mediating for around 3 years now. It's something I'm extremely passionate about. I enjoy working with people, and I find it very rewarding. Why did I want to become a mediator? Now, back in 2017, I actually went through a divorce and separation myself. So me and my ex-husband, once we made a decision, okay, it's best that we now bring the marriage to an end. We sat down and thought, okay, we've got 2 daughters. Now, what happens to them? Where do they go? Where do they stay? So there were lots of questions. Anyway, we managed to work through it all, the logistics around, the visitation schedule, how often I'll be seeing them, how often will they be spending time with dad, etc. Where will I live? We had some joint finances together and some liabilities that, were tied together that I had to sort out. And to my surprise, we managed to work through things fairly amicably, and it was actually pretty straightforward. Now, it was only shortly after my divorce when I started the dating game. I started dating single fathers. And during my dinner dates, I'd hear lots of horror stories about fathers who have gone through the horrific court process. Some who have been left in huge amount of debts because of money they've spent on litigation costs, hiring barristers, lawyers, some of the frustrations they have around their ex-partner, around co-parenting, communication. And I was finding that offering a lot of emotional support throughout, and I thought, gosh, divorce really isn't straightforward. The process for everyone, like it was for me and my ex-partner. Not everybody can sit down and work through things amicably. And whilst I do understand that the emotions are quite heightened at the time of divorce and separation, and there is lots of animosity between both parties, I thought, well, there must be an easier way or a simpler way without, going through court. And I think at that time I was looking for a new career anyway. I was bored of my current job, wanted some flexibility. And whilst I was doing some research online, I come across family mediation. So I thought, oh, wow. So I looked into it. And I also realized that there's a demand for mediation, especially where I live around East London. So I thought, great. And I trained and I got my foot straight into it. And it's been an amazing journey so far. I have really enjoyed it. I've worked with clients from all sorts of backgrounds, and it's really interesting. And I suppose my experience through, the sort of co-parenting relationship I have with my ex, and just passing on some of the guidance, some of that advice. It's been great. Yeah, definitely enjoyed it so far.
So a bit like us coaches with Fay and I then, who got into doing what we do as divorce coaches, because we're story and experience. Yours is exactly the same. That's your motivator and your driver then. So for people that are watching, if they haven't or listening indeed on the podcast, if they don't know what the kind of foundational definition of mediation is, can you give a bit of a description around what mediation is?
Yeah, so family mediation is where a mediator would sit down with 2 parties who have either separated or looking to separate, and it's just simply working out the logistics in the future around child contact arrangements, if they have children involved, or if they have joint finances, reaching a financial settlement. And it's just to avoid the court process. As we know, the court process can be very costly, very time consuming. And it's also around the new laws. There is a new law where clients have to attend something called a MIAM, which is a mediation information assessment meeting. It's the mandatory part of mediation. Now, this is where we it's an opportunity for the mediator to listen to the client's background situation in some more detail, discuss with them the issues and objectives of mediation. The mediator will then talk them through the process moving forward and what that will entail, discuss with them some of the fees involved and the documents produced in mediation, and do a thorough safeguarding screening assessment just to assess suitability for mediation, and then note down the other party's contact details. And the mediator will then make contact with the other party to see if they're interested in attending a joint mediation session to work through, any disputes and issues that both parties are having. And if the other party isn't interested, then they can be issued with a court certificate. Yeah, so that's a bit that's required by law. It's something that it's first, if aren't able to resolve issues through mediation, then they'll need to prove that they've tried or made an attempt and have attended a MIAM. So yeah, that's what family mediation is. It's just, helping clients resolve issues post-divorce.
Oh, thank you, Hafsa. I mean, it sounds like the MIA is a really good thing to have in place. And I imagine most of mediators were doing that before the bill came into place. Can you kind of just talk us through some of the common problems that people will face that come to mediation?
Yeah. So you think of the time of separation, and if you have children involved, the first thing you think of, okay, what happens to them and where do they stay? Stay with mum? Do they stay with dad? If so, or if they're going to be spending time between both houses, what will that visitation schedule look like? What will happen on weekends? What will happen on school holidays? What would happen if I want to take them abroad somewhere? Or even things like if they want to maintain time with ties with extended family members from mum's side of the family or dad's side of the family, and how could we do that? Child maintenance, if there's a family home together, what happens to the family home? Do you continue staying in it? Does one parent stay in it with the children, or do they sell the property, or do they have other joint assets together? What do we do? How does that get divided? Any joint liabilities? Again, who takes responsibility for that? Pensions, etc. So a number of different issues. So the two main brackets are child contact arrangements and financial settlement, and obviously within those there's lots of subheadings. So essentially what we try and do in mediation is, for example, child contact arrangements are probably the more common than financial settlement. They tend to come up a lot more in mediation. Is that we look to working with both parties, both parents, a parenting plan. We put together a parenting plan. Okay, so what happens, where do the children stay? So depending on the ages of the children, if they're, for example, at school age, we might look into putting together a schedule for term time contact, or school holidays, what happens during Christmas, birthdays, family events, or even things around communication between your co-parent. I mean, how would you work on building what can you do to build a good foundation to a co-parenting relationship? Just things like that. Because I mean, if you have children together, moving forward, there'll be lots of decisions that would have to be made with regards to their health, their education, anything else they may get involved with outside of school. And what you want as mediators, and what I like to try and do, is help them build a good base for a co-parenting relationship, help them work out, how can we best, what's the most effective line of communication, or, that we can use moving forward, if there's any boundaries that need to be put into place, etc. How can we do that? So always trying to work on that element as well in mediation, so as well as working out the physical contact, between the parents and the children. Always try and tie that in as part of the parenting plan as well. You want to be able to give the both parties sort of skills like that to be able to, where they can sit down together themselves without a mediator and just be able to communicate their issues, because circumstances change, and if you've had a plan in place for contact, for example, if something changes and you want to make some changes to that, you don't want to be running back to mediation all the time unless you really have to. This is something that I think is really crucial, that sort of core element is. I always like to think about communication. And sometimes I suppose clients, when they come in to mediation, they're quite distressed, and I think they themselves don't think of communication and what that might look like moving forward. And I think very fixated on just the physical aspect of, when will I be seeing my children, and what's going to happen to the family home, and always remind them, actually, you also want to think about things like this as well. And then I recommend things like, maybe divorce coaching or Kafka's parenting course, and signpost them to other agencies, because it definitely is needed. Because I suppose we all work together hand in hand to make the process as smooth as possible for them. So
I was going to, if I had a client that I was going to be referring through, for example, what advice could I give to a client in terms of what they need to prepare for mediation? What sort of information would someone new to this who's thinking, oh, I've never done this, I don't know what it is, and they're a bit worried? What useful information is there to prepare?
Yeah, to be honest, the MIAM assessment is like a consultation anyway. So it is where we talk clients through what they will need to prepare. When my clients ask me, it's like, okay, what do I need to do for MIAM? And all I say to them is bring a pen and a piece of paper, and that is it. Once I've got a full background history of their issues for mediation, I can then pick up and I'll say, okay, right, you need to prepare X, Y, and Z. Now, generally, if it's issues related to contact arrangements for children, and if there's a financial element, then I might ask them to prepare like a monthly expenditure form for the joint session, because if they might be asking the other party to contribute more towards towards the children and the upbringing. So I might say, okay, have a monthly expenditure table, which I will forward on to them by email. I just say, look, you might want to think about costs and expenses or things like that. I might ask them to just note down some visitation schedules. There's lots of examples online as well about this sort of, you can do lots. If you look at like a 50-50 schedule, lots of different ways to do it. Some people prepare to have a split the week up, or some people prepare to do week 1, week 2, and then I just talk them through the different structures. But again, we'll talk them through in the MIAM. That's an opportunity for me to then discuss. Like, for example, if it's to do with like financial settlement, then that's a bit more, there's a bit more of a rigid structure for that, because they'd have to complete certain forms. But again, all of this, the mediator would go through them in a lot more detail in the actual MIAM assessments. That's the purpose of the assessment. So when a client was if they were to inquire about family mediation with any service or with any mediator, the first thing they'd have to be booked in is for that MIAM, and is to then prepare the client for the joint sessions moving forward if they were to go ahead between both parties.
So what's some of the biggest challenges you face in your role as the mediator then? Well, I imagine there's quite a few.
I think that's a hard one, actually. I think there are quite a few. I think the hardest, obviously, I have to remind myself that my role as a mediator is I have to keep impartial. And I do tend to do that I try and do that all the time. But at times, and I think if I've really understood a client's position or situation, and the other party is being quite difficult, and I'm trying to move them from their position, it's moving clients from their position. And I tend to find that clients are very fixated on their legal position when they come into mediation. So it's very much like that. I've had legal advice, and according to the law, I'm entitled to X, Y, and Z. So in mediation, I want this. And it's now, I think for me sometimes, although I do understand that by law there are certain things, and people have their rights, etc. But it really is important to take the dynamics of every family, because every family and every situation is different. And I think this is where some people I don't understand. Like, for example, like a 50-50 schedule may work for one family or one set of children, but might not necessarily be this work for somebody else. And I think that's just explaining and trying to get clients to understand that is sometimes one of the biggest challenges I also face. And I think another challenge I face is emotions clients experience just during the mediation process or even during their separation. And I think I find that a lot of clients make their decisions based on just their emotions, and are not able to actually think logically about the future because they haven't actually navigated through the emotions themselves. And this is why in the MIAM assessment, I spend some time just offering a little bit of emotional support, because I think it's crucial that because they need that. I mean, there's lots of emotions to be working through, anger, the revenge, the heartbreak, or whatever that may be. And it's just interesting the complexity of certain situations, which and try and encourage clients to seek, therapy or counselling or whatever they may need. Because until they've done that, it's better that they do that and then come into mediation. That way they can really think, they're in the right frame of mind to really think about the future and what's best for them and their family. But it's just trying to get clients to sometimes understand that, which I find difficult.
Yeah, that's a similar thing for coaches, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. We always talk about how having that support network with all the various people that you need is so important. Having your mediator, having your coach or your counsellor, having your friend, having your exercise buddy. It's so important to have that, support framework in place when you're starting, separation and divorce.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another interesting question that I get asked at times is, so what's the success rate for mediation, or what's your success rate so far? Now, when I think of mediation, although I understand that mediation is to avoid the court process and to help clients reach an amicable resolution and helping them resolve their disputes. But personally, for me, and my experience, I think actually the most effective mediation sessions I've had are not necessarily the ones that have actually come to a proposal at the end of that session. I think the most effective ones are the ones where I know that clients have navigated through their issues and their emotions and are now able to just communicate, now have a good foundation to able to communicate moving forward. So they don't need me. So then, if they were to leave the session, now they can go away and actually resolve their disputes, because I've given them those skills and the advice and guidance they need to help build that foundation for a good co-parenting relationship. They must actually probably the most effective mediation sessions, I would say.
I love that, Hafsa. With you talking about that, actually, some of your role is just to help people to communicate. I mean, when we think about, some people have been married for many, many years, and now they're faced with the prospect of moving forward alone, whether that's because, they haven't got children or whether they've got a co-parent. So you can get to the point where you think, I've been with this person for X amount of years. How on earth now do we communicate with each other? What is the right way to communicate with each other? And so I think with you saying you're working on communication, I think that is amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's absolutely crucial. And I always try and fit that in with my mediation session. And I suppose that's probably why my service may stand out from some of the others, because I'm a huge advocate when it comes to mental health as well. I have lots of experience in safeguarding, and I'm actually a trained emotional support worker. So I think, I suppose going back to Tom's point at the very beginning, when you were talking about myths and divorce, there seems to be this set perception around, I don't know, when people think about, okay, when they're looking for a mediator or a mediation service, they always seem to be under this illusional assumption that a good mediator is somebody who has a background in law. Actually, because in mediation, we aren't actually allowed to give legal advice. And I always ask clients, because sometimes they'll ask me, they're like, so you're a trained family solicitor? And I'm like, no, I'm not, I'm just a trained mediator. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I prefer a family solicitor and a mediator who was both. And I was like, okay. I was thinking, why do they, ask that? So, I actually just asked one of my clients one day, and I was like, do you mind if I asked why would prefer somebody who's got a background in laws? Or they're like, oh, because, they would know the laws and they'd know my rights. And I think it's really important that you have a mediator that understands emotions and mental health, because that is, you've got to be able to be right frame of mind to be able to make decisions you got to be in the right frame of mind to be able to make decisions moving forward, and that's not necessarily somebody who knows all the law, the family law, which, whilst I understand in certain situations is important, it's crucial. So I think it's really important that you're able to understand the impact of mental health that it has on individuals when going through divorce and separation and things like that.
I remember you asking me a question when I was on your radio station some months ago. We were talking about mental health and divorce, and you asked me a question around men's mental health in divorce and things like that. We were having a bit of a general chat. And actually, I wanted to also ask you in terms of from a cultural aspect as well, because I know where you're based in East London, and I was just wondering, is there more or less of a stigma still attached to certain cultural backgrounds when it comes to divorce or separation, and particularly trying to utilize a non-court dispute resolution service such as mediation?
I think if you was to, I think I'd take that as two separate. Okay, so if you look at divorce and look at mediation now, divorce generally, I mean, if I look at the British and South Asian community, and the divorce rates have skyrocketed over the years, especially in the last 2 years, and with the pandemic, etc. So I mean, it's fairly common, and although there was lots of stigma attached around divorce, and there were strong cultural norms and values about preserving the family honour and being part of we all need stability in society, and in order for that to take place you need a nuclear family, a mother and a father and children, etc. And that is slowly changing, but very, very slowly. I mean, obviously if you're from a Muslim community, it is still frowned upon. Divorce has to be the absolute last resort. So it's fairly common now, and obviously people have different views on it, but it happens. Now, it's interesting what you said about men and their mental health. So if I look at mediation, if I was to look at my client base, so 80% of my clients are actually men, and a lot of them being from the BAME community, or and I guess the typical scenario is mom and dad split up, a mother takes the kids, and she's gone. She's obviously feeling very upset, or angry or heartbroken over the situation, and the easiest thing to do is, okay, well, you know what, you're not seeing the kids, so and then the fathers are left no choice but then to step into mediation or even end up in court. But because men and mental health, I think, still is a taboo subject within the sort of South Asian community, and I have seen a lot of, I have come to experience a lot of men and their mental health being deteriorated throughout the process, not just through mediation, even the court process, because it's mentally draining. It's absolutely draining, and they're just expected to sort of just get on with it, put a brave face on, and so I think it'd be interesting to tackle something like that, and just making people more and more aware. And again, it's I think there seems to be this misconception that within the BAME and South Asian community that it's the mother's role to be looking after children, so children should be spending a lot more time with their mother, and once you're divorced, I mean, that's it. There's no contact between mother and father. So this is my own personal experience. I got criticised a lot by my own community, because me and my ex-husband, we have a very good co-parenting relationship, and it was like, oh, you can co-parent well, so can't just stay together? And I guess people not realizing that in a marriage, expectations is different. When the expectations come in, that's different. But just because we can co-parent doesn't mean to say that we can stay together and be married. And I suppose some people maybe look at, for example, if you look at it from a religious perspective, Islamically, if you and your husband, if you're divorced, then there's a term we use, which is he is now a non-mahram for you. So a mahram would be somebody like your brother, your father, your mom's brother, and your dad's brother. So then sometimes it's not really encouraged by strong community leaders that, after, what happens after divorce, and, encouraging people to retain a good relationship with their ex-partner just for the sake of the kids. So sometimes that cultural mix and the religious mix also comes into it, and it complicates things. So I think although divorce is now quite common and it's a bit more accepting, but I think the idea of a notion of trying to build good co-parenting relationships with your ex-partner still isn't. I think it still needs addressing in the community, and we definitely need a lot more community leaders to come forward to try and encourage that, because there seems to be this thing where if he's your ex-partner, you're supposed to hate him. And it's quite hard, and I suppose that's why as a mediator, that's something I try and tackle and looking to hope to address within my own community, and just to encourage more and more people that it's okay to have a co-parenting relationship. It's okay to go to school assemblies together. It's okay to go to parents' evening together. It's perfectly okay, and it does not mean that, you have to get back together because, you can be civilized and be amicable for the sake of the kids. It's perfectly okay. But I think it's just about educating the generations, both the older generation and the younger generation, and people just understanding emotions and just navigating through, just working through the processes.
Interesting. You said there about the generational side, because that's what I was going to ask you actually, because I've read some reports recently and some papers specifically about the different rise areas within divorce and separation. I know that the term grey divorce, kind of the 55, 60 plus area is quite a large growth area of divorce applications, specifically primarily led with female applicants. But also in terms of what you were just talking there from a cultural aspect, that you said in the last couple of years that there's been quite a large rise. Do you think that's anything down to a generational shift and a difference in perspective and view? Like, as you said, you're trying to re-educate some of the community to be able to look at it in the way that you do, in terms of we can be great co-parents together, but we don't necessarily make a good romantic couple together.
Yeah, I think it's down to a few reasons. I think education, definitely. I think obviously as time goes on and more and more people are educating themselves, just making themselves aware about their rights. People are understanding abuse and what is abuse like. People are a lot more familiar and not afraid to step out of their comfort zone. Women are a lot more independent. I think obviously a couple of decades ago it was different. Women were seen as more of the homemaker for a lot of South Asian families. And you needed a husband because he was the breadwinner. And I suppose women, weren't as educated, so just weren't aware of their rights, or if they were in an abusive relationship or weren't happy, you were just expected to stay because that is what good women did. But obviously, people have challenged that over the years, and it's different now. Certainly, it's different. And I think with the pandemic and the lockdown, obviously the divorce rates have skyrocketed in the last 2 years. So that's definitely one of the factors that have contributed to people just being more and more familiar, and I guess I think what's interesting though, although the divorce rates are high, I think what I also find that when it comes to reaching a financial settlement in mediation, I also find that it's still fairly common for the BAME community not to opt for civil marriages. So they'd go through the religious ceremony, but then when it comes into mediation, or when the law, when we have to apply family law, because they're not registered here as married, clients are left in quite a vulnerable position. And I've noticed as my experience as a mediator, I think I have found that lots of parents have left themselves in quite a vulnerable position, because although times have changed and also generations changing and people are more educating themselves, I still find that personally within the South Asian community, a woman does a triple shift. Yeah, she'll go out to work. She'll take care of the kids, the responsibility of the kids, the household chores. I think still does lie heavily on a woman. And if you was to have children, the mother is still expected to make the sacrifice, not maybe opt for, for professional advancement or career advancement, and either expected to quit their jobs, go part-time, and then look after the children. So, if years have gone and you've decided for whatever reason your marriage isn't working out, and then you come into mediation, or you're looking to go through courts, the father's probably had all that money that he's accumulated over the years, and probably a much stronger position. The mother probably isn't left very much, and they don't have the favour of the law in them because they weren't recognised here as marriage, as registered here in the UK. I do know there are some community initiatives going around. There has been some pressures putting on local mosques to make that mandatory, where if you was to go through the nikah, which is a religious ceremony, that they should be going for civil marriage as well. But again, I think it hasn't been as successful yet. It's still quite common for people not to do that. But I told you, when I started doing mediation, I realised how important it is to have a law to protect you, especially when it comes to finances. You could be left in a very quite a weak position. Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, that's why I'm so pleased you could come on, Hafsa, because our podcast is all about educating people, raising that awareness, and you've kind of already given us quite a lot to think about. And I'm really fascinated when you're telling us that 80% of your clients are male. I mean, that makes my heart sing, that actually men are going to access help. And do you think they're accessing mediation as opposed to coaching or counselling? I suppose a little bit of support in the emotional support as well as the mediation.
Yeah, I suppose if they're left without seeing their children, and it's not really leaving them with a choice, they'd have to. And yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard as it is, and that is still the case. And the family court system, it's sorry, mind my language, it's just absolute shambles. I mean, I think it's just it's a real shame, but I can understand with the backlog the courts have. So you're looking at approximately 3 months for a wait, for a first hearing, and it's not even a case of, okay, you've done one hearing and that's it. The judge has made a decision about what happens, in terms of contact for you and your children. It can prolong, and almost about 18 months are dragged out, and it's just a real shame. And I think there's an organisation called Justice for Fathers. I know it's a charity and it certainly provides that support. But we need a lot more organisations and charities and services like that. So, and obviously what you guys do, which is great. It definitely is needed. But again, I suppose around the stigma around men and mental health, men just probably feel like they've just got to put this brave face on and just carry on. But I mean, it can be quite damaging to a person's mental health. It's interesting because certain cases I look at, and when I do safeguarding screening assessments, some parents might mention abuse and emotional abuse, and they might talk about some of the trauma that they've gone through in their marriage or relationships, and because of that they were able to get injunctions like a non-molestation order, which is of course an order to protect them from harm, which is great. That's what the law is there for. Then sometimes when I think about abuse and things like parental alienation, and that's all very grey area. So although one party is protected because they've got injunction, what happens to the other party who is left maybe without seeing their children and has to go through the process like mediation and go through the courts? And I know people and if there's allegations that are made against this partner, this person or particular individual, and you're waiting for all of that to clear, and you could be going through left with months and months without seeing a child. And that's parental alienation. And then, that in itself is a form of abuse, but that all sort of gets pushed away, and there's nothing, there's no protection, there's no rights for parents like that, and it's a real shame sometimes. So I think obviously since the rise of the pandemic and the family court system, I've seen a huge rise in number of cases. So it led the Ministry of Justice to introduce the government family voucher scheme, which has been operating since April this year, which has been a great initiative. Obviously, it's encouraged a lot more people to go through mediation as opposed to courts, because they simply just cannot keep up with the backlog. So they pumped in, the Ministry of Justice, I think they pumped in almost about 2 million into the initiative, and it's been great. So it's just a pilot scheme. I think it's due to run out. I know it got extended from August this year to December, but it's due to run out. I'm hoping that scheme continues, because it definitely is needed, and it's helped a lot of people. So that's been great.
You can find that link, can't you, through the Family Mediation Council to make an application for, it's £500. And you support those that voucher schemes.
Yeah, I do. Yes, yeah. Cool. So I think it's people should take advantage of that offer. So the voucher scheme covers the cost of the joint session. It doesn't cover the cost of the actual MIAM.
Yeah.
So clients would still be expected to pay for that, but it does cover the cost. If both parties are in agreement on mediation, it does cover the cost of that joint session, which is great. Yeah.
But I don't have any other question for me, because you've answered so much. But I mean, the only last thing I would really ask is, what would be for anyone that's listening to this, that's just been told that has just found out their relationship is over, or who's deciding that their relationship is over and they're thinking about mediation, what would be your kind of top tips for someone that's entering into the world of mediation and trying to figure out what it all is? What advice would you give?
I think honestly, the very first advice I would give is work through those emotions. Start working through those emotions, whether that be seeking therapy, counselling, whatever that may be. Because until then, it's hard for them to work out their next steps. I think mediation should come in step up. So I think it's really important that people just get the help they need for the mental health, because it's a stressful time. It's an extremely stressful time. It's a very sensitive time for our clients. So start getting some help. I've noticed that since the pandemic, lots of clients are inquiring about legal aid. And I know I think each borough or each area, there is a citizens advice bureau where they can go and get some help and some free legal advice about this situation. Because even for like standard price for MIAM would be £100, but some mediators do legal aid, some don't, and for the ones that can't afford it or struggling to find a legal aid mediator, then it's quite hard, and it's quite I can imagine this sort of toll it might take on them as okay, what to do, and they're panicking. I mean, it depends. I suppose for everyone it's different, and it depends on your relationship with your ex-partner. If it's fairly amicable, then if you're able to sit down and think, okay, let's start working through some of the issues, and it might mean that they can narrow it down before they come to mediation if they can. I think it's always important that people just take out the time for themselves as well, just to think things through. When you've had that time, then you're able to think, I suppose, with a clearer head. Just take that break, just take out that time. If you're able to get some free legal advice, then of course go for it. And then if you're ready to speak to a mediator, and then think about moving forward and what to do, then great. Then you just simply go online and just look for your local mediator. But it's hard. It's not an easy time, and we do offer support to families. Not just through the joint sessions, but even the correspondence in between them. I get lots of calls on a daily basis. Oh God, this is happening. What do I do? Although we try and refrain from discussions outside of the mediation session, but sometimes people are desperate. They don't know where to go, because if they were to pick up the phone and call a solicitor, and it's solicitors charge by the hour, and sometimes some people just need not even just legal advice, just a bit of emotional support, just a bit of advice and just a little bit of guidance and pointing them in the right direction, whether that's through our service or through any other agency that we can redirect them to. And I'm always available enough for clients, always like to go that extra mile and just try and make it as a smooth process as possible for them moving forward.
Fay, anything from you?
No, that was absolutely amazing. As we always say this, don't we, Tom? But we could sit and talk to our guests all afternoon.
Yeah, no, it's been an interesting discussion. It certainly has. But yeah, I think I definitely, I think I do notice the gap in the market for agent mediators. I think some of there's 700 mediators registered across the UK. I think I'm probably in the top 3% who come from the BAME community. There aren't very many. I know sometimes clients want somebody who's able to understand the cultural sensitivity around their case and do ask for, or even if they would even need like somebody to, if they don't speak English, they require an interpreter, then we can offer that. And I think it definitely is needed. We do need a lot more mediators from different cultural backgrounds. It's definitely needed, and that's something I'm hoping to target or to develop.
It's the same in the coaching world as well. It's all about creating opportunity and diversity and finding that you find the person that's best suited to your needs and your situation. So I completely resonate with that. But thank you so much for coming on, Hafsa. We'll be sharing all your details, but for anybody that's still watching, that's Hafsa Patel at Primrose Mediation. But we'll share your links and get you tagged everywhere as well. But just want to say thank you very much again for coming on. And
thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed that discussion. I love to do more of your shows again in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure. Right? Take care. Bye. Bye. Bye.